shadowing us, right behind us, right on the side of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, in the whole night, this isn't a man.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black thing, is all I can call it.
Welcome to Squatch-D TV, exploring the Bigfoot mystery each week with your hosts, veteran researcher, author, and TV personality, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, and from the Bigfoot Research Project of Kentucky, Chris Bennett. Sit back and buckle up as we bring you guests from around North America discussing the Bigfoot phenomena, but not without a few laughs too. Here are your hosts, Steve and Chris.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch-D TV for today's date, May 9th, 2021. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. And all the mothers in heaven, happy Mother's Day, guys. And I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls. Well, I'm flying solo tonight because Chris is off this week. Got a little bit of a back problem. How long has he had it? About a week back. So anyway, I'm kind of, it's just me and Mr. Steenburg tonight. How you doing, Thom?
I'm doing fine, sir. I'm doing fine. And I didn't forget to phone my mother this morning. So.
Good man. Good man. I tried, but the long distance bill would have killed me because she's upstairs. Anyway, as we normally do, let's do the shout outs for this week. I see B Lynn in our chat room. Hello, B. Hello, Eyes See an Enigma. He's back again. Welcome back. Good to see you. Ammon Chris. Hello, Ammon. Good to see you. John Swan. Good to see you, my brother. Aaron Mollenkamp. Good to see you. We got the Western New York Bigfoot organization. There he is. He said he tried to get in early, so he wasn't in the nosebleed seats. So, and of course, we got Christy London. And hello, we were trying to get Mike to come on. I think he's having a little transmission issues. And Mike was going to be the backup co-host tonight, and nope. And of course, we got here's new Arthur. Welcome, Arthur. Lockbeard, welcome to the show. Good to see you. I know you. I think we saw you over at Squatch Talk a couple of weeks ago. Welcome to Squatch-D TV. Kenneth Collins, welcome, Ken. It's been a bit. Glad to see you back. Who else? Oh, Brian and Chewy go hiking. Hello, Brian. Good to see you. Frank Smith from the UK. Hello, Frank. Good to see you. I hope things are okay over the pond, and I hope you guys are getting through your COVID dilemma soon. Bob Lemley is in the house. There he is. Hello, Bob. Jimmy Trick. Good to see you, sir. And of course, we got my good friend. We got Rick from Mineral Point, Wisconsin. Hello, hello. And who else we got? We got I saw Mackie James in there somewhere, and my good buddy Austin. So we will let's start the show. So let's hop to it since we have nothing to jib jab about. Usually Chris and I will banter about something silly. And we got Diane in the house who's yelling hi at Christy. Welcome, Diane. And Ammon Chris is asking, because we talked about that earlier before the show, is Bigfoot going to call in? I'm sorry, Bigfoot can call in, but we don't have Igor or Igor or whatever you want to call him. We don't have him on the show to interpret, so it would just be babble. Of course, we got Jerry is in the house. Hello, hello. And Nikki is in the house as well. Hello, Nikki. And what's up? Besides my blood pressure and my cholesterol, I have no idea. Anyway. And of course, Charlie Wonton in the house. We haven't seen Charlie in a couple of weeks. There he is. So, but anyway, Thom, we last time we had you on, we got in this big discussion about the massacre debate, and we can put that behind us since that was many months ago. And I want to get into you. I want to get into how you got started into the Bigfoot business and some of you've been on a lot of different exploits. It looks, amazing. And I want to talk, especially like to me, the Jacko stuff you did was just amazing because you brought that 1800 newspaper story to life on your videos. So that was really cool too. So anyway, how did you get started in this?
I was a weird kid growing up. I was a weird kid growing up. Growing up in the 1960s. And of course, back then, the only guys who were really doing much in this whole Sasquatch question was, the late John Green, the late Reddy DeHenden, and people like that. And it all started for me one day when my parents, I think it was like 1965 or something like that, 1966, for me and my sister brought home for, education purposes, a hardcover Reader's Digest book. And in that book, it had paragraphs and chapters on anything you could think of, from volcanoes to hurricanes to tornadoes to nature to this to that. And of course, it had a big section in the middle of the book on the age of the dinosaurs with those beautiful color paintings in there, which most dinosaur experts say were wrong. They told us Brontosaurus was so heavy he had to spend all this time in the water. T-Rex standing straight up, dragging his tail on the ground. And of course, paleontologists know none of that is true now. And right in the middle of that dinosaur section, there was a little 2-page article with the usual 3 blurry black and white pictures called The Thing in Loch Ness. I don't know, some switch, and of course the term cryptozoology wasn't really used all that much, but something snapped. Now, I must have read that damn thing 80 times. And I started pestering my parents for more information. They eventually got me a library card because, again, there were no computers or anything like that. If you wanted to learn something, you had to read about it in books.
Imagine that.
Yeah, so I had to go down and trying to find more on this so-called Loch Ness monster. I started reading about this thing in Western Canada called the Sasquatch. And in the United States, they called it Bigfoot. And I knew at a very young age I was never going to move to Scotland. So, but I think what really did was not too long after that, on a school night when I should have been in bed, I came downstairs and my parents were watching a movie on the black and white TV in the living room. And, I walked around the corner and I expected the usual from my father. Hey, boy, it's a school night. What are you doing up? Get back up there. That guy. But he didn't. And as I recall, his words were around something like, hey, the lad's interested in this sort of thing. Maybe we ought to let him watch this. And my mother gave the, oh, no, he can't watch this. Oh, bad dream. That kind of thing.
Keep him up all night.
Yeah. But my father won the argument. I was allowed to watch whatever they were watching. I'm sure he's regretted that victory ever since. And what was playing was that old Hammer horror film, The Abominable Snowman in the Himalayas, and it was Sasquatch from that day on.
Hey, look who decided to show up. We got Mike Ann, who's going to be our special guest co-host, deep in the woods, as you can see.
Hey, Mike.
Hello, sir. How are you doing? How are you guys all doing tonight?
We are wonderful. We're glad you could make it. I knew you had to get in position, probably somewhere to get a signal.
Yeah, and it's for May in Western New York, where it was like 60 yesterday. We're looking at about, I don't know, 1/4 inch of snow on the road right now.
Sure you aren't in Canada?
Well, we are Western New York. It's only an hour and a half to the fall. So, yeah, we could be.
All right, there we go. So that's easy. So, so tell me, how did you start your research? I mean, aside from, reading, and you kind of made me laugh when you talked about going to a library, because I wonder if kids even know what those old card catalogs were, or the index, the library indexing system. Was that the Dewey index system? I forget what they called it.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I remember going to school and they taught you how libraries index books.
Yeah, it was strange, and of course, most of the books and what I was interested was usually stuffed in with stuff on ghosts and all kinds of other things, because you could tell they didn't treat it as a serious subject. But what really got me going was when I was in my early years. I was just completed in the late 70s when I was posted to Alberta when I was doing my time in the Army, Canadian Army, 1st Battalion, PBCLI. I saw the Rocky Mountains for the first time in my life one morning coming out of the base, because we got bussed in to tour the Regimental Museum. And I looked at them, and it looked like a phony. It was a beautiful, clear winter's day, and they have what they call a Chinook, where it was perfectly clear. And the Rocky Mountains were right there before me. I had never seen them before in my life. And it looked like a phony Hollywood backdrop. It was that clear. I must have stood there for like 20 minutes just staring at them. And I thought, and I made 2 decisions. I said, one, I'm never going to live anywhere east of this line ever again. And 2, if they've been seen in Western British Columbia or in Eastern British Columbia, they have to be seen here too. So what I did is I took out an ad in the Southern Alberta Press at the time. And the ad was quite simple. Sasquatch, anyone who believes they've had a sight of this creature, please contact Thomas Steenburg with a phone number. And I never really expected much of a result. But I tell you, my phone was almost ringing out on a daily basis.
Nice.
And this wasn't too far from the old dairy farm where Rennie DeHinning got his start 20 years before me. Right in that beautiful view of the Rocky Mountains in Calgary, west of Calgary, Alberta. And I got contacted by the late Professor Vladimir Makotic, if you remember that name.
I do not.
He was a professor of anthropology and archaeology at the University of Calgary, and he co-authored and put together that book with the late Grover Krantz, Sasquatch and Other Unknown Hominids.
Okay.
Right. And that's true. And Vladimir, introduced him. And Vladimir was a senior citizen even back then, and he couldn't get around much anymore. So basically, we kind of became unofficial partners. He did the academic stuff, and I went out and did the field investigations, and we co-opted. And he wrote the foreword for my first book, which came out in '89, The Sasquatch in Alberta. And through Vladimir and time, I met the late John Green. I met the late Bob Timmis. I met the late Grover Krantz. I met the late Rennie DeHinning. And I got to know all these gentlemen very well, became friends with them all, managed to do research with them all. And I was fortunate enough, never, ever, like so many others, to get sucked into their personal wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. There were so many people who... If Rennie found out he was seen working with Titmus, Rennie wouldn't have anything to do with them, and vice versa. But for some reason, they never held it against me. I don't know why. Rennie would always say things like, "What does that Titmus say about this or that?" And I just simply tell him, I'm not going to tell you, Renee. I won't tell him what you said. I won't tell you what he said. He didn't like it, but he never held it against me. And I still to this day wonder why, but it worked out that way. And that's how I got started.
Wow. And that's a great start, having a partner, that is actually a scientist.
Yes. Yes, and he was one of the few. Him and the late Grover Kratz at the time were one of the few. Never really met John Napier. He had passed away before then, and boy, did they ever get a lot of heat from their fellow academics back then for even having an interest in this kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
That's why my driver tonight's anonymous.
Yeah. His driver is a scientist. We'll leave it at that.
I guess they're getting not as much heat today, but they sure did back then. It was like a taboo subject. In Britain, there was always a bad term in the halls of academia and science, the road to Loch Ness, and it was not a good road to be on if you were a young professor trying to make your mark in the world of anthropology or zoology or whatever it happened to be.
Mike, we could put him on if he just puts his mask up and his hat down, and we can call him, Dr. Elvin Dorwinkle. We can call him.
Well,
yes,
I just
Dr. Dorwinkle.
want on that side of the truck. So,
what does Dr. Dorwinkle teach? Yes, I teach home economics, and we teach how to bake cakes. And no, there's a lot of chemistry involved with baking, as you all know. So anyway, but anywho, so let's take a little diversion here, because you knew 3 of the 4 horsemen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could sum up maybe in one sentence, I'll just go down the list. John Green.
Strictly zoological, gentleman, and common sense to the hilt.
Grover Krantz.
A brilliant scientist, open-minded, and not afraid to take the crap.
And we will allow you to say more than one sentence about Rennie DeHinden.
Rennie was Renee. There's no other way to describe it.
I'll never forget his comment about Kiwani lapsaritis. He's had 267 sightings in his mind. It's like saying you've had sex like 267 times but never got laid.
It was actually, he's had so much whatever encounters. That's like saying you've had 260 sexual encounters but never got laid.
You know the quote. Oh my God. And just so y'all know, Mick the Meatloaf Siphon is in the house, and Jordy Warner's in the house. Hello, Jordan. And Nani is here as well. Want to make sure we throw out. And of course, Central Florida Bigfoot is in the house as well. Welcome one, welcome all. That is great. Now, is it true? I know Renee really was at odds with Grover, was at odds with John, was at odds with Peter Byrne. Obviously, I think everybody was at odds with Peter Burnham. How did John and Grover get along?
Very, very well. They were very good friends. They got along very, very well. And Renee, he just thought that, and at first I was a little bit more on Grover's side on this, because what caused him to sour on Grover was Grover's support for the late Paul Freeman and his findings. You see, because as far as Rennie was concerned, it was all nonsense. I had to admit at first that I thought Paul Freeman and his initial encounter in 1982, when he was a watershed ranger, was authentic. And I defended him a lot longer. I knew Paul Freeman. As a human being, you couldn't ask for a nicer guy. If the world were filled with Paul Freemans, the world would be a better place. But for some reason on this subject, and I'm only expressing my opinion, Ivan Mark syndrome.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So you think the Freeman film is not authentic?
In my opinion, it isn't. And which film are you talking about? He took two.
The one where the famous one where you say,
there
it
it
goes.
Yeah. No, I can't really back this up, but in my opinion, I think it's his son Dwayne in a suit, because Dwayne's a real big man like Paul is.
Gotcha.
In my opinion. And I think it's the same suit they tried to use once before, and as well as several still photographs in years before that as well. Yeah, and Dwayne is a hell of a nice guy too, but for some reason he was just helping his father out and making up a lot of stuff. And when I call it Ivan Marks syndrome, Ivan Marks, if you remember who that was, he was a guy back who was really heavily involved in the 60s and 70s. Came to prominence during the Bosberg cripple incidents in 1969-70. And Ivan Marks, it's like I said, was probably involved in that, and he was kind of like later on he started faking films and making up stories. He was generally a yarn spinner.
Yep.
And I call Ivan Marks syndrome because that's a guy who's a researcher who may have been involved in something authentic once. It's the center of attention for a while, and when that attention dies down, the attention apparently was more important than the subject. So they start making stuff up to remain the center of attention. And it works until they get caught.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, see, I always had an air of suspicion about the Bosberg track.
Yeah.
Because it was Ivan Marks that found it.
Well, actually, Rennie always told me, I always asked him, do you feel that Ivan, because he was with Ivan.
Yes.
That line of tracks you're looking at, he goes, no, it was me who said, let's go look down there. Now, maybe I just picked the right way and he had it up. I don't know, but he said, I found them. Yeah. And I told Ivan was looking on the other side of the road. I called him over.
Okay.
And,
because according to his book, written with him and Don Hunter, it was Marks that pulled over and jumped out of the car and said, I'm going to check this area.
Mm-hmm. That area. But Rennie went down the road and took another look. Okay. And that's where he found the tracks, right across a fence right by a railway line.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why he always felt, and there was variance in them too. You don't see that because you always see the same two castings that Rennie actually poured. But there were actually castings in the cripple foot, the deformed one. There are other castings where you see the toes in different positions and stuff like that. It was a really interesting find. Maybe it was because even Ivan then, at the time when all that was starting to settle down, he claimed to have shot a film of the crippled creature, which is obvious fake.
Yep.
Right. And that got exposed. So so because he was the first example that I call the whole thing whenever anyone goes off in that direction, I call it Ivan Marks syndrome.
And of course, we got somebody new in the chat. I just want to throw a hello out to Blue Daxi. Welcome to the show. And we also got Terry in the house too. And Terry has a question. How do you feel about the PG film? Of course, I'm pretty sure I know how you feel about it, but go right ahead.
In my opinion, in October 20, 1967, if the Sasquatch does indeed exist, and I do believe it does, I believe Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin filmed one that day.
There you have it.
Yep. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
If you'd like to.
Sure. I know Bob Gimlin. We're good friends. I've known him for 30 years, and I just cannot believe he's been lying to my face for 30 years. Roger Patterson, I never met. He died of Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1972. But what I've learned of him in the Yakima area, you guys remember an old show on television called Green Acres?
Sure do. Well, there
was a character in that show called Mr. Haney, and Roger kind of reminds me of that guy. Everybody in town knew him. Most people really liked him, but everybody also knew, for God's sakes, don't lend him any money because you'll never get it back. That was Roger Patterson. And Roger became involved in the Sasquatch phenomena just a couple of years before he got the film. And the year before, he published his book, Do Abominable Snowmen in North America Really Exist, which was a self-published book. And he tried to start his own sort of like Bigfoot group at the time. And they said it was awful funny. People were sending in money, and you see Roger opening it up, taking the cash, throwing the applications for his group in the trash can next to him. That was Roger Patterson. And he went to the Shepherd's Camera Shop in Yakima when he was going up to Mount St. Helens with Bob, and he rented.
There it is.
This guy, you know, a Cine Kodak K100 Springwell movie camera. You can see that all right. This is the same type of camera that Roger Patterson used. That.
Hang on, we're gonna. Why don't you hold that bad boy up again? Once, let me see if I can't get. I still haven't figured out how to.
Click on him and drag it over, Steve, and it should be able to drag his screen, Tom's screen over. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, hang up.
And that's to the other side. She's like, you keep moving the wrong way. It's spring wound, eh? Spring wound movie camera. You got the dial, you got the trigger, and you got the handle here, and you spring wind this thing. They took 100 rolls, 100-foot rolls, right? This camera was actually this type of camera was actually discontinued in 1964, but there's still a lot of them around, right? And you have this little trigger here. You push down or up to get it to go. You push down. Can you hear it going?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. But you let go of it and it stops automatically. And twice during the sequence that Roger was filming, he stopped filming. And that's why you get 2 frames that are terribly overexposed. And now if you look at the dial of this thing, the dials have, 14 frames per second, 64 frames per second on it, 48 frames per second, 57 frames per second, and 24. There's no 18 frames per second on the dial. But what a lot of people don't know is a lot of these cameras in the early 1960s they messed around with the inner workings to have them shoot at 18 frames per second, but they never bothered to change any of the dials.
Gotcha.
So they didn't know. And of course, Roger being Roger, he just rented the camera. He knew, he was shown how to load it, how to look through it, and how to pull the trigger. So he never knew what he had the dial set at. He never knew the key information as to what type of lens he had on it. Right?
Have we ever figured out what type of lens it was?
Well, this lens is probably the standard. See, I can't see it in the light very well here.
So you had that camera how long, and you don't even know.
But they were removable and interchangeable. But in this type, you had to unscrew it, take it out, and put another one on. Later on, they came out with the turret with the different lenses on it. But Roger had one of these fixed lens.
Now, according to Mick Sion said that Roger also had 2 different lenses. Do you know that to be true or not? Or
I have no idea if that's true or not. As far as I know, Roger was just rented the camera. He took it, failed to return it. They issued a warrant for his arrest, and he eventually had to give it back. That's because he rented it for this little trip up in the Mount St. Helens region with Bob. And when he got back, he had a message from John Green about the tracks being found in the Blue Creek Mountain region. That investigation went on in late August, early September. So he rushed down there because at the time, Roger was going to film his own little homemade documentary. He thought he could do that. And he wanted to get pictures of tracks. I'm sure he hoped.
Yep. I don't know if you can see that, but Central Florida Bigfoot stated, sounds like your typical Bigfoot researcher, not knowing their gear.
Yeah. He was basically just renting a camera, and he knew how to load it, aim it, and shoot, and that's about it. Yeah. And that morning, they went off, going back to an area they'd already been through 3 times before. Roger always felt that, and Bob, they always felt that maybe the sound of the creek had muffled their approach, and that's why they were able to surprise her. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think maybe that Patty was probably watching them approach, and she only reacted because the horses did. The horses panicked, and she knew she had been spotted, and she did what they do 98% of the time. She walked away. The only difference between this and so many other times before is Roger, being a rodeo rider, was able to maintain control a little bit when the horse almost bucked him off, and he was able to grab. There's a story, and one time even Roger said the horse fell on him, bending a stirrup, but according to Bob, he said, no, I didn't see that happen. Roger managed to get off the horse, and he grabbed the camera out of the saddlebag and started filming. So those first frames, you see, and they're jumping. Roger's filming as he's running, and he goes down. And because he was such a short man, he was only between 5'2" and 5'3" inches tall. He came up on the other side, right by that S stick, and it wasn't until he passed that S stick that he filmed those famous frames and made history. And because he had spent so much of that 100 roll of film shooting each other with the pretty fall colors, there was only 952 frames left. So he just kept shooting until the film ran out.
If I seem a little distracted, I have Bill Munz's book. Somebody said that.
Yeah, I've read it too. Yeah,
I'm just trying to. Somebody said that he knew the actual lens, but yeah, I think this is a very authoritative book on the minutia of the film itself.
Matter of fact, one of the big stumbling blocks, according to Munz, on his whole research in the Patterson film was not being able to determine what lens Roger had on that camera.
Right.
Yeah. It makes a difference. It really does. Yeah. Yeah, it really makes a difference. And of course, she left a great set of tracks. And Roger being Roger, after the creature was gone, he cast what he thought were the two clearest ones close to where they first encountered her, right down by the creek. And I got them here. These.
Yep.
One left, one right foot. Cast them. And it was Bob Titmus who went down there 9 days later and cast 10 more prints in succession in a row.
And while we're on it, he is known as sometimes the fifth horseman.
Well, according to John, he should have been one of the four horsemen. He should be there, and Peter should not.
Now, while we're on that topic, what was your impression of Bob Titmus? And
Bob Titmus was a straightforward guy. And he was basically, he shunned publicity, and he just was interested in following up on this and became obsessed with it. And he managed to get the late Texas millionaire Thom Slick to finance him in what was called the British Columbia expedition, and up halfway up the coast of British Columbia. And that's where he did most of his research until Slick died and the money ran out. Yep. Yeah.
That was very unfortunate that.
Right. And Rene and Titmus couldn't stand each other. No.
Rene, it sounds like to me, was like the ultimate character who probably didn't like too many people, especially if you disagreed with him.
Oh, well, Rene was very territorial. To him, everyone was just some guy coming in to mess in on his business. Right. But he never seemed to be angry at me, but what he said about me to other people when I wasn't around, I have no idea. But Rene was Rene. There's no other way to describe him. I loved the guy. We were good friends. I loved the guy, and I like to say he loved me sometimes.
Except he wanted to believe that Freeman.
Well, Rene is the one that changed my mind about Paul Freeman. He go talk to Odd, and go talk to this guy, go talk to that guy. And I did, and I had to admit he had a point. Yeah.
Question from the chat from Quickwitty. Hello, Quickwitty. Welcome again, sir. Was Patterson trustworthy?
In a lot of people's opinion, and especially Rene used to refer to Roger as that little bullshit artist. And Patterson was and Rene, in fact, wanted to just prove it. That's why he was so interested in the whole thing. He wanted to disprove. He wanted to prove that Roger Patterson had pulled this off somehow. But he couldn't do it. And he said, what's important is what's on the film. And he said, I don't care if Jack the Ripper was holding the camera. The point is what is on that film.
That sounds like that sounds like Rene in a nutshell.
Yeah, but it's like I said, Roger, what I've known and learned of him, he was like Mr. Haney in the Yakima area. Everybody knew him. Most people like him. But everybody also knew, don't lend him any money because the odds are you'll never get it back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, is it true? I've heard this in pieces, is that towards the end of his life, Rene kind of not believed or started to have doubts about the Patterson film.
Rennie had doubts, serious doubts about the whole thing.
Gotcha.
Because he had never seen anything, never come across anything. He saw footprints, and he was really beginning to have doubts the whole thing. But Rennie went through a very hard time at the end of his life, and he was basically mad at everything and everybody. So and it was sad the way it happened, but
right.
Even I mean, Rennie wanted me to buy his green camper truck, the Green Hornet, and I made arrangement just before he passed to do so. And I was still in Alberta at the time, and I flew to Richmond to attend his memorial service. It was well attended by a lot of people, and it was a sad day. And we were kind of joking because there had been a thunderstorm through that area early in the morning. It was in the distance, and we said, well, it looks like that thunderstorm has passed. And I think it was Larry Lund that said, no, that's not a thunderstorm. That's Rennie at the gates of heaven. God just told him there is no Sasquatch. And he's lying, and he's arguing with him. But I went back there a week later and to talk with Eric, because Eric was Rennie's son was sorting out his estate, and to get the Green Hornet back, ready to drive all the way to Calgary. And you see this truck. It was a beautiful little camper on wheels, but oh my God, duct tape this. Why was that? He had redone it. It was like a homemade truck. And there was a good chance it wasn't going to pass the out of province inspection, and that was the deal breaker eventually that killed it. But we needed new cables for the batteries, which for some reason the battery was not in the engine compartment, it was behind the driver's seat. And we went there. I went down there with Eric and to the Canadian Tire. And Eric himself, great guy, country boy Canada. You're in this pickup truck, you're up to your ankles in discarded Big Mac wrappers and milkshake containers and stuff. And I said, my God, Eric, you got to empty this truck out because you can't see your floor. And he said, yeah, I know. I tell you what, we're right beside the garbage cans there. Do me a favor, throw this stuff out and I'll go in and get the cables. And I did. And I was throwing arms of this stuff in the garbage for him. And right there in that little lump where the gearbox is, the gear shift is, where the drivetrain goes through, there was a little black half shoe box. And I picked that shoe box up and, oh my God, this is nothing. This is dirt. And I had that thing right over the garbage can. And I noticed these little white flecks. I thought, I better not. These may be seeds or something. And Eric came back and I said, oh, wow, great job. I can see my floor for the first time. I said, Eric, what's in that little shoe box there? I almost threw it out. And he turned white as a ghost. He said, that's Dad.
Oh.
I came that close to throwing my late friend Rennie de Hinden's ashes into a garbage can of candy.
It turned to the dump.
But fortunately, I didn't do it. I never would have lived that one down. I can picture Renee up in the pearly gates. You know what that Steenburg did?
Somehow I can imagine, the multiple. There was some movie I watched, and they ended up like drinking. They thought it was like supplements or something. So this must be the protein powder. I'll put it in the. Ugh. Thank you, Timmy Boy, and welcome, Timmy Boy, back. Timmy Boy says, hey, wipe your feet at the door, people, and hit the sub and like. Really appreciate it. Sharing is caring, and be sure to hit that like. And if you're not sub to the channel. We have a lot of fun here. So we do have a couple of other questions, but I have a question before we get to those. One of the things I noticed that caused dissension between, I believe, John Green, Roger Patterson, and I believe it was Renee, was the Frank Curlow incident. People don't know the Frank Curlow incident. And I don't even know if you're aware of the Frank Curlow incident.
Who's Frank Curlow?
Frank Curlow apparently was the first person to claim that they had a Bigfoot body. And he had a partner, but the partner disappeared. And it turned out to be a hoax, but it caused some dissension.
Yeah. And he had the check, and he tried to hand him the check, and he sat back and said, "Show me the Bigfoot first."
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know the particulars of it because it was covered. I'm not sure if it was covered in either one of John Green's book or it was covered in Renee's book. But I know I read it somewhere about Frank Curlow, and that was the first Bigfoot body hoaxer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know any more particulars of that.
I know what Renee offered like $10,000 for it. And but Renee was suspicious from the beginning, and John and Peter Byrne were saying, "Well, Renee, you don't have 10,000. What are you doing?" And he said, "Yeah, but that was for a Sasquatch he didn't have."
I was going to say, did Renee had $10,000 at one time?
No, he never had that much in his life.
No,
but but he said, "Yeah, I just offered it because I didn't have it, but he didn't have a Bigfoot, so." And I knew it, so yeah. I'm just trying to get him to expose it.
Yeah, there was some maneuvering by Roger Patterson during that whole thing that apparently, I think, kind of made John Green distance himself a little bit from the crew. I'm pretty sure it was.
Well, what caused John Green and Rennie DeHinden to end their partnership was doing the Blue Creek Mountain investigations in August, September, just before the Patterson film was shot. During that investigation, they all flew down there with a guy named Keith Gazera in the plane and a guy named Moffat who had a tracking dog, White Lady. And while they were down there at Shishfoot Tracks, it was a blistering hot day. They for some reason they all ended up jumping in the Jeeps and driving to another location, but they left Renee behind.
Oh, jeez.
And Renee was stuck out there way high up in Blue Creek Mountain for like 6 hours. No water and everything. And when they all came back, Renee took that double barrel shotgun you see Keith Gazera and most of Blue Creek Mountain footage carrying around. And he stuck it in John Green's face and said, "You ever do that to me again, I'll blow your damn head off."
Well, that would kind of make me distance myself from the person quickly.
Yeah, and John told me that story years ago and told me to never say it until after he's gone. And I did. And Renee never ever admitted to anything like that. And I think one time he says, "I want the word even Charles in the damn thing." But that's the kind of thing that happened. Of course, Green after that said, "I wasn't going near him after that." and Renee became such a pain in the butt down there that Green had him fly back in the plane with Keith Gazera, whereas Green rode in Don Abbott's car. So.
Wow. So,
but they still communicated after that every now and then. It's not like they shut each other off completely.
So just for folks to know and for you to know, during our I think it was like episode number 7 of Squatch Detective Radio. This goes back to, I think, 2007. I think it was January of 2007. I had John Green on the show. Mm-hmm. And I interviewed him. And of course, that was the old Blog Talk days, so the audio quality wasn't that great. But what I'm actually doing is I'm restoring my interview with him a bit and his quotes and some of his talking. And I'm actually in the process of restoring that audio to make it more high def so people can hear it better and cleaning it up because at that time, why am I saying Roger Patterson? John Green had a lot. He was stuttering a little bit and repeating himself a lot at that point in time in his life. So I'm cleaning it up to make it sound very fluid, very, very good, and not destroying the message he was putting out there. And so that hopefully I'll have that concluded within a month or so. So and I'll make sure I send you a copy of that.
I only have one criticism with John Green. Love them. He was the worst driver that ever existed. behind the wheel, he was dangerous. I don't know how he lived so long.
He let his wife drive. That's probably why.
Yeah. Oh my God, it was awful, scary. pulling out to pass a truck, a Greyhound bus coming.
Oh,
like, wow. he didn't think any of that. Right now. Oh, he was a horrible driver. A horrible driver.
Well, maybe 100 years from now, when we're all sitting beyond the pearly gates, we can challenge Moneymaker. We can watch a race between him and Matt Moneymaker.
John Green would win, hands down, if he didn't go up on a burning ball of flame somewhere. I used to ask June, how can you stand riding with him? She just says, I just tune out.
Oh, geez. We would call that race the White Knuckle 500.
I don't think John ever got mad with. The only argument I ever had with John Green really was about the Patterson film, because John was adamant right up until about 2010 that Roger, once he crossed the creek and was filming Patty and got 352 and that sequence, that Roger never changed position. I said, yes, he did, John. You can see it. He walks up to that log you see in 352, and he's either standing right beside it or he's straddling the damn thing. No, he did. He never changed position. I said, yes, he did. And eventually we showed it, and he must have seen it a million times. He goes, maybe you're right. I don't know. Yeah.
I think if you listen to Bob Gimlin describe it, he did. He stopped and he fell and he got down and he shot with his elbows in the ground.
Well, it's still debatable whether he got down on one knee or not. But when he filmed those famous sequences, he stood in one spot, and then when he lost sight of her in that little batch of clumpy trees there in the middle, he changed his position, and he moved right up to the log in 352. And that's where you see those last few frames with her straight from the back.
Yep. So we got so many questions popping up in chat right now, and we're going to somebody had asked earlier on, Em and Chris. No, was it Em and Chris? I forget. But anyway, somebody asked if you knew Robert W. Morgan.
No, I've never met Robert W. Morgan.
So
no.
That answers that question.
Yeah.
Maybe you know, but Nick was wondering how much Renee made doing those Kokanee beer commercials. Probably not much.
Quite a bit. He was afraid he was going to have to pay income tax.
Oh, jeez.
They got to stop sending me these checks. I'm going to have to pay income tax on this crap.
Oh boy. Now we're really reaching for the bottom of the barrel. Nick wants to know if you have any stories about the late John Eric Beckchard.
Oh God, we could do a whole show on that. John Eric Beckchard used to phone me at 3 o'clock in the morning and stop pretending to be a professor from some university or stuff. But he always see right through it and you go, hi, John. How do you know it was me? And I said, it's always you. Beckchard was, I like to say the Sasquatch field today more resembled an asylum but being taken over by the inmates. Now, back in the early days when I started, most of the guys were strict zoological, but there were a few exceptions, and he was one of the biggest ones. And he used to show up at the conferences wearing an ET mask and dancing around. And he'd create quite a disturbance. And he'd always end up getting kicked out. And then he'd be marching up and down the outside, passing out pamphlets of how they were throwing him out because they were afraid to know the truth and stuff like that. Eric Beckchard was quite a character. A nice guy, but he was absolutely hard-playing nuts.
Right.
Yeah.
And a very super intelligent guy too.
Yes, but he was crazy.
Yep.
Yep.
So I don't know if he was crazy or crazy like a fox.
No, he was crazy. I remember one story when the conference in the University of British Columbia, we're all staying at because
Hold on, stop. They actually let him into Canada.
Oh yeah.
Mistake number one.
Yeah, and. You always see him. He always had that pink tie, and he was always carrying a great big brown paper like shopping bag and stuff in it. I go, of course, the theater where the conference is on the other side of campus. I see him standing there, and I'm driving by my old Land Rover, and I kind of look the other way as I'm going by, pretend I don't see him. And I swear I got half a kilometer down the road, and all of a sudden I hear wham, wham, wham. Beside my truck. I look at the passenger side rearview mirror. There he is, running beside my truck, banging on it.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, John, I'll give you a ride.
So everybody blames you for him making it.
They chased me halfway across the campus to get a ride.
You're halfway there. You can run the rest of the way.
I guess it was possible because the speed limit there is only like 10 kilometers an hour, and I always obeyed the speed limit. My mistake that day.
Got it. He's running after us.
Yeah. But he'd come up, and he always stayed at John Green's house because John would always let people who were visiting stay in the spare rooms downstairs. Let me stay a number of times.
Oh my God!
I always noticed June always made me do the dishes, and I always said, "You make anyone else do the dishes?" And they just smiled. I don't think they did, quite frankly, but they always made me do the dishes. But Becher would always stay with the Greens, and whoever. I just say he'd just go on and on about his weird and wacky theories and stuff like that, and I just.
June probably didn't want him to have to do the dishes. She just wanted him out. Go play with your little alien friends out in the backyard.
Yeah. John Eric Becher was a nice guy, but he was certifiably crazy. Yeah.
Mick says Becher was a member of Mensa, but he had blind spots of common sense that made him dangerously close to being an idiot.
The BFF, the Bigfoot Forum,
oh my God,
referred to him as the man who could not be named. He got banned from it very quickly, and he made such a nuisance of himself with everybody. They referred to him that you weren't allowed to say his name or you'd get banned.
You couldn't Beetlejuice him, huh? You couldn't say his name 3 times or he'd show up?
Say Becher 3 times and he'll show up.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm afraid to say that now because he's gone. And if I say his name 3 times, his ghost may show up.
I wish the ghost of one of them would come back and just tell me, is the Sasquatch really there, or am I wasting my time?
Well, I think the ghost of Becher would probably come back and tell you it's an alien from another planet.
Or came from the 4th dimension.
Yep.
Or like Kawani, you just go up the top of Mount Breckenridge and fill your mind with love thoughts, and he'll come and talk to you.
Now, Kawani was really the first one to start that all up, wasn't he?
I'm not sure if he was the first. He's one of the few that are still going. Again, a real nice guy. Absolutely. But he's a fun guy to talk to. But he is a hippie that never grew up.
Yeah. He seems,
at least in my opinion.
To me, even Becher, even though he had all these crazy ideas, unless you tangled with him and whatever, he was for the most part harmless. Yes, he had a lot of internet.
Oh yeah, he was
irritating
for being so silly.
Yeah,
and that's it. But he was never dangerous or anything like that.
And yes, Quick Witty, we're going to get to your questions in a second. We're going to. I haven't lost it. But then you look at people like Dr. Matt Johnson that are doing stuff that, because of the atmosphere he's creating. I think he's creating his own cult.
Well, Dr. Matthew Johnson came prominent when he so-called had that encounter with his family.
And it's funny because I have a video. I forget what year it was. It had to be in the early 90s of you. And then a little while later, Matt Johnson comes on to talk and talks about this.
That was a remake. Yeah, that was a remake. They tried to remake the Leonard Nimoy series from the 70s. What was it called? Unsolved Mysteries?
No, In Search Of. In Search Of.
And they tried to reboot it, and the host of the show was the guy who played Agent Skinner in the X-Files. And I was pretty upset because they edited it and made me sound like I was saying something completely opposite of what I was saying. Matthew, I almost get the impression at the time that Johnson was first became prominent after his so-called encounter with his family. At the time in the UFO field, there was a guy writing books called Communion and things like that. And he was sort of a psychiatrist who wanted to deal with so-called alien abductees. And it almost sounded to me like Dr. Matthew Johnson was trying to set himself up like that to be a sort of someone that people who have encounters with Sasquatch could talk to. And that's what he was trying to do. Yeah. At least at first.
Right.
Yeah.
What was I going to ask? Well, anyway, let's get to Quick Witty's question. What do you think of how to hunt and Bigfoot Odyssey and other Bigfoot business tactics?
How to hunt
Steve
Asdahl. Yeah, Asdahl. I don't have any time for, because when he first got involved, he said things about John Green and
Meldrum and
everybody, and he even tried to accuse John Green's father, trying to exterminate the Japanese Canadians during the war and things like that, which was absolute nonsense. And then he accused them all, John Green, late ranking, tried to compare him to Hollywood producers who abuse women and all that stuff.
Right.
So I got no time for anything that guy says. He's a guy who had a hunting grizzly guide, that when they banned the grizzly hunt in BC, he had to find something else to make his to pay. And he got involved with the Sasquatch, and I think he's just trying to make his site pay. Because all he does is read emails.
Right.
Yeah.
And I in front of these beautiful things that could be a backdrop. When you were talking about the Rocky Mountains, I kind of
Well, he does live up in the Whistler area, and all you have to do is go out anywhere, and you got beautiful scenery all around you. Yeah.
So he could be doing it right out of his backyard.
Yeah. But he does go out into the woods. He was a bear hunting guide for years. And a hunting guide for years, and that income has been taken away from him. And I think this is just one of the things. But he's arrogant as you wouldn't believe. At least that's my impression of him. And I think he got involved with guys who are pushing the massacre nonsense. And he's the latest one who brought all that up again. That's when we had I was on your show a year or so ago when you had to hold the cell phone up in front of your mic that we were talking about. It was him that got all that going, got people talking about that nonsense all over again. So no, how to hunt. He's just another guy who's, and I'm only expressing my opinion, tooting his own horn, trying to be, famous without doing the work.
And being very abrasive about it.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is, he has not only had issues like that now in the Bigfoot community, but prior to that, he was having similar in the hunting community or the guide community.
Well, if you read the some of the things that were said on the hunting guide pages before he got in Bigfoot, yeah, you're right.
He was called into question about some of his things he was showing and some of his tips. Yeah. And he would come back being very, brash and arrogant and similarly very threatening. In fact, there was one wolf rescue, or not a wolf rescue, but they were trying to conserve wolves, and he had gotten a little spat on a forum with them, and then he actually sent them basically a threat. And that's posted on their website that I just happened to pop in, and some of the comments we're getting comments about is like they don't take criticism very well. He doesn't take criticism very well. Absolutely arrogant was another comment.
I still assume it's the same. After what he said about John Green and stuff like that, I never watched another one of his videos, and I won't.
Or the purposely calling Meldrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, Rick Ariolo is really tearing him apart on his new series of podcasts there, and he says it right. Isdale, and Don Fuller just said, as I was just reading it, Isdale's a gaslighter. Of course, Richter's got this crazy sense of humor, and it's not for everybody. But if you want to check out him, that's his season this year. Is probably machine gunning.
I don't think Isdale gives a rat's behind whether or not
does. He's already responded to the first video.
No, I don't think he gives a rat's behind whether the Sasquatch exists or not.
Yeah.
I think he's just trying to make his site pay, and as long as he gets a few thousand followers, that's fine for him.
Well, yeah, I'm coming out with a video real soon about him. I'm working on that too. But he has put out, stuff. Like the Mark Anders hoaxes, those Mark Anders is an admitted hoaxer, I believe, and put stuff out there for shock value, and it's not real. And there was one that was called the Mexican Bigfoot. Well, Isdale actually posted that on his How to Hunt Facebook page, along with a footprint, which is on the back of his book, and doesn't say, oh, what do you do when you see this on your trail camera? Well, it's a hoax picture, and everybody thought it was his. And he responds by not responding. Is that yours? Or when did you get it? It says nothing. Creates all this buzz. Well, it's a hoax picture. So,
he did have a video, I noticed at one point, where he was basically saying, this is a footprint and I found it.
Yep.
And there was something there with a general foot shape. But my question is, first of all, it's an opening in the woods, and there's absolutely nothing in front of it and nothing behind it. So what did the Sasquatch do? Hop down out of a helicopter and stomp one foot down, then go right back up again? No follow-up, and he just reads whatever people tell him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's not using his great acumen as a tracker and a hunter.
Yeah.
To do any investigation whatsoever. That much is for sure.
Oh,
that
was another. Yeah. I don't waste any time with him. I don't believe a word he says, and nope. I won't waste any time with him. No. It's just like the biggest example of what I call Ivan Marks today is Todd Standing. I don't believe a word that man says either. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here, and that is true. Some people are, Quickwitty's having an issue with the show Bigfoot Odyssey, doing raffles and stuff like that during the shows or whatever. And, and Quickwitty said that, I go on expeditions and I don't ask money or do fake raffles or anything like that. Very true. If, somebody wants to come on expedition with me, I'm doing something there in the area, where they're in my area, call me. It'd be my honor to show them around. And if you want to go poking around, I'm more than happy to do that. I don't want to do anything on a huge scale, obviously. That's just my philosophy. I don't knock people that try to, hey, look, we're all trying to fund our own stuff here. That's, Quickwitty, just so you understand, that's why my YouTube channel is monetized. That's why Anchor FM is monetized. That's why, I've written 3 books, because it helps me recoup a lot of the thousands of dollars I've spent in equipment. And even Mike can attest, I've spent a lot of money doing this.
Yeah, it's not cheap to go and get a couple $1,000 thermal camera or night vision. I mean, I'm probably right now in the woods, probably sitting on about $5,000 worth of equipment of my own.
The subject's kept me bankrupt for more than I can say. Yes,
yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
You got to pay for gas to get out in the woods sometimes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes those raffles have to come out. Just to not merely to get your name out there, but more to the gear to put the content out. I mean.
And I think it would be an appropriate time to do a plug for myself. Oh. I've written 3 books. If you want to check them out, we have 50 Large, True Story of the Bigfoot Body Hoax. Now I'm forgetting my own books. The Sasquatch Playbook, which is my last book, which is basically looking at the Bigfoot mystery from a believer but using a skeptical approach. And then my one that's been out there for so many years now, what would Sasquatch do, using primate behavior to validate the Bigfoot mystery? You can find those on squatchdetective.com. Just click on the book you want to look at, and it'll take you right to the Amazon page to purchase it. So there's my cheap plug for the night. Every little dime helps. That's why I do it. We are setting a Patreon page up, and we're going to have some exclusive content for that as well. That's where the John Green interview is going to head to when we're done with it, because it takes time to do that. And this is just a way, quick way, I recoup that. And quickly, he says, Steve, he actually said that's how to properly fund an expedition. I agree. I don't like taking people for money just to take them out in the woods. That's just not my thing. Now, if I'm providing food, like for example, the expedition I went on just recently with the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, excellent expedition. They paid a fee, but their camping was taken care of. They rented all the camping spots, so their food was taken care of. So they got food. So what their money basically paid for was their food and their camping. And if there's a little extra for the organizer, so be it.
I really have no problem with people trying to find ways of making this pay. I mean, the late friend of mine, late Bill Miller, just passed away October last. Started a little tour company here called Sasquatch Country Adventures in the Harrison area, where we take 3 or 4 people out. But it wasn't really an expedition type thing. It was basically show them areas where things happen and explain the history of it to people who were interested. And Bill put all that money into sponsoring trips into the bush to actually look for evidence, and that was fine. I had no problem with that. I helped them out with it quite a bit, and we got a lot of positive feedback on it. But that died when that whole thing died when Bill died, because I wasn't interested in carrying on with a tour company and running a tour company. I want to look for the Sasquatch. I don't want to. I want to be tour guides for people and things like that. And I have people go out with me all the time, but I do it for free.
Yep. Same here. Yep.
Yeah.
Same here. Quickly, he says, Odyssey, the first thing they mention is we need to make money for this and we need money for that. No books, no nothing in return. And I tend to agree with my philosophy. But you know what? Here's the thing. Nobody is forcing anybody to pay for those things. Mm-hmm. If you want to put $5 into a raffle, then fine. Nobody's being forced to do that. Mm-hmm. I don't ask for any money to watch this podcast. I never will. I won't make this a member only podcast. I'll get paid the peanuts that YouTube will throw at me. That's fine. I'm going to have a Patreon page, and again, that's voluntary. If people want to go over there and be a contributor to the show, then they can do it. I'm not forcing them to. I'm not mad. I'm not going to treat anybody any differently if they don't. But again, I do offer stuff, and I'm a very firm believer generally, and that's why I'm not really pushing the Patreon page at all, is because I don't have that content yet. When I start putting exclusive content to that Patreon page, then people are getting something in return. And I am a firm believer in, you pay some money, you should get something in return. Now, a raffle is kind of, that's a chance. That's like a lottery. If that's what people want to do and they want to, it's no different than going to the store and buying a lottery ticket. Nobody is forcing them to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same with the people who don't like conferences. And I understand that it's a double-edged sword with conferences, because people say, well, there's the people trying just to push their egos and talk and do all that stuff. But I've always found it, like when I go to conferences, and Mike's been to a number of them, do I ever sit and listen to the speakers? No, I'm out there mingling and talking, and I have my own table to deal with. But that's what I like conferences for, is that camaraderie and meeting people and getting to know people and getting the stories and all that kind of stuff. That's the fun bit for me.
Yeah.
It's the networking. I mean, my memories came up today from Eric's event from 4 years ago. Came up in the old Verizon cloud today with everybody. I mean, that's the big thing, going to those things and interacting with everybody. I mean, we're doing it this weekend, next weekend that will be out. So.
Well, Mike, you're out looking for evidence right now, ain't you? That's why you had trouble getting here earlier. You're finding a spot where you can transmit from.
Yeah, and I have never seen golf ball size snowflakes. And I'll send you guys some photos later. The places we've been and the weird stuff we've seen. But and I apologize for signal. We got up there. We had full 4 bars.
Don't ever apologize for going into the bush looking for evidence, sir.
That's right.
That's what we should be doing right now. You're doing the right thing.
Well, I appreciate it, because usually we'll go out and we'll turn Steve on, or one of you, if you're out somewhere and we're listening to things, we'll turn on some of the other podcasts and we'll listen to them, and hey, it might draw something in, because who knows who's playing what scream or whatever. So
I've never owned a laptop computer, so I couldn't transmit from the bush even if I wanted to.
And in Central Florida, I agree with that. I'm not here to defend Bigfoot Alley. To be fair and accurate, the facts is all I'm saying. I have a chance to win a $4,000 drone, so I took a chance. Free will.
Did he win the drone?
Not well. We don't know yet.
Oh, that's too bad. I hope he does.
and I hope you win the drone.
And I got to give a shout out to Central Florida Bigfoot. I met him through another podcast through Instagram, and he took me out in the woods, and I got to go out in the swamps in Florida and learn about Florida. So Matt's a cool dude. So
I had a guy show up. I had a guy show up here. He just wanted me to tell him about some of the more classic cases that are local, like the Ruby Creek and the Jocko capture. I said, "Are you doing anything this afternoon?" He said, "No." I loaded in my car and I took him to the Chapman site, and I took him to tunnel number 4 where Jack made his year. Made his year. He wanted to give me, he tried to hand me a couple $100. I said, no. I'll tell you what, you can buy dinner. Yeah.
Unlike another Canadian who charges like $3,000 to $4,000 to take on an expedition where he's pointing out all these tree breaks.
Yeah.
And has Sasquatch gloves in his back seat.
Not mentioning any names. Touchdown.
That's right. Gotcha. Yeah.
Thom, can I ask what the I don't know what the most important evidence, or the most striking? I guess I want to go most striking evidence that really hit to the core that you found that really keeps you going.
Had to be, and it did keep me going, because at the time I was married and I was getting a lot of pressure from my ex-wife to put the Sasquatch in the back burner and concentrate on more important things. Had to be the footprints found along Baldbeard Creek near the Chilliwack River in 1986. I've written about this actually, no, I haven't written about this one a lot, but I have written about it. It was a sighting that happened by an American couple who were fishing down here during Expo year 1986. I found the tracks. The witnesses never saw them, and there were over 100 of them. If I hadn't come across that, and I couldn't explain them away, no matter how hard I tried, and if I hadn't come across that and saw that myself and cast a couple of them myself, I might have said, okay, a Sasquatch is, keep it on the back burner as a hobby to do in your spare time instead of devoting your life to it, which I ended up doing. And that's the most fascinating case of personal evidence that I have ever come across. So far, every time I've sent in hair samples and stuff to be examined, they've come back with common animal explanations.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
things like that. Yeah,
finding tracks. I mean, and I talk about how I found. I actually heard and smelled what made my track.
Yeah,
and then to track the one that was right off the trail, and then come back the next day when it's daylight out and find the trackway going uphill. That really just, I sit there and I think to myself, if even though I've had my own sightings, you always doubt that part, well, maybe I was just imagining the whole thing. You always second guess yourself. Maybe I was, but I can't throw those tracks away.
Yeah. And And to answer a sort of a part two to Mike's question, 2004, I may have finally saw one myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might have. I won't say it was because it was just too damn far away. And I've always had the philosophy, stick to the facts, never deviate from the facts. In 2004, I saw a figure. It was jet black in color, and it appeared to be walking upright. But we only saw for about 4 seconds.
Hey.
But it's also, I couldn't see details, so I can't say with 100% certainty it wasn't a really big, odd-looking guy way up there. Well, what he would be doing there, I don't know. If that was a Sasquatch, I have seen one. If it was not, I still have not.
And that was in BC?
Yes.
Yep.
West side of Harrison Lake, just before the turn off to Mystery Valley.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to say this, and please understand this quickly, is that my show is not to trash other shows. There are a lot of shows on YouTube. Everybody has their own taste in what they want to watch and what they don't want to watch. This show is not the cup of tea for everybody. And I'm sure, all the other shows are, have the same thing, that not every show is a cup of tea for every single person. So
No.
I try to put what I feel is the best product forward and the most honest and integrity-filled product forward. Does that mean that some night I may have a guest on that may be pulling the wool over my eye? Present company excluded, of course, Mr. Steenburg. Yeah, that may happen. I may get a witness on here someday that may be completely bogus.
Mm-hmm.
Happens. We've had, years ago, we had Ed Smith on the show. Ed Smith was the Daisy in the Box hoaxer from years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that happens. Does that make me? I mean, like I say, when I put a witness on, I'll ask them questions. I'm not investigating them.
Mm-hmm.
It's my job to interview them. This is this is a show. So I take a different seat here a lot unless I'm doing something special. So, when I have a witness on, it's about getting their story out and let the audience be the judge of the material.
Yeah, and I'm not naive to believe that everyone I've ever interviewed was telling me the truth. I tend to believe a lot of them really believe they saw something. And you always say there's only 3 possibilities when you're interviewing a witness. Only 3.
Yep.
1, they saw a Sasquatch. 2, they mistook someone or something for a Sasquatch. Or 3, they're lying. Those are the only 3 possibilities. There are no others. And if the Sasquatch doesn't exist and never did, they're all either mistaken or they're lying.
And quickly he says, come on, Steve, stick to your guns. Those guys are phony. How long have you been doing this? Well, I started the podcast in 2006. So yeah, we're coming up on a long time doing this, 15 years. But here's the thing, Quickwitty. And Mike can attest to this. I don't listen. I very rarely listen to other podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely. I don't have time.
Something.
Huh?
Yeah. Unless I send something to you or somebody else sends.
Yeah, I just don't have the time. I do watch Squatch Talk occasionally. I don't catch every episode. I catch when I can because, I've had Pat Turner on the show and I try to support his show a little bit because he's bringing out stuff that is honest. But if, truthfully, I don't listen to shows that espouse a lot of stories. I don't listen to many podcasts. I catch, stuff that maybe evidence, if somebody's putting out evidence, then I'll catch it or I'll try to catch at least part of the replay of it. But very rarely do I listen to, podcasts. I just don't have the time in the day. I'm a working guy, so I put my 8 hours in. I come home. I got to do my man chores. I got my own stuff I got to do. I got to deal with my own YouTube channel, Facebook page, Twitter page. And Mike kicks me because I neglect my Instagram page. But yeah, I have a lot on my plate.
Comedies, you're gonna pick your channel, be it one of the main networks or one of the offshoot networks. It's just, and we appreciate Mr. Steenburg being here, and I appreciate being part of this tonight because, a lot of the ones that I listen to are people I've been in the woods with or met, and been out there, and that's why I follow their shows. I wish I could follow more shows. So.
Yeah, there's not enough time in the day. So I appreciate that being said, for the folks that are out there and listen to this show or watch this show live, and for those on Anchor FM and on iHeartRadio and Spotify and Stitcher and Apple Podcasts, if you guys have some free time on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, just pop on over to youtube.com/Steve Kulls and visit us live. Say hello, drop in on us once in a while. Even if it's for 5 minutes just to say hello, we'd love to hear from you.
Mhm.
So, but we appreciate the time people spend to listen and have great input to this show, because our audience has always asked some great questions, and I appreciate that greatly. This new platform it will be 2 years on this platform coming up in August, and we've grown it and changed it and switched it. And I really think that, we're starting to find a rhythm here. I say, and this is one of the things about this show, no question is off grounds. You can ask me tough questions. I don't care. I like tough questions. That's what I love.
I like the audience, because I'm hopefully helping the audience, newcomers who are just getting into this and wondering if they should or not. I say go for it.
Yep.
But adopt a philosophy like I always have, like mine is stick to the facts, never deviate from the facts, and have a healthy dose of skepticism, because a healthy dose of skepticism is the best thing a researcher can have.
Amen.
I mean, there are so many people in this field now who call themselves researchers. I mean, to me, a researcher is someone asking a question is trying to find an answer to the question. And it's somebody who may, even though I don't believe it, I accept the possibility that in the end, I could turn out to be wrong. I mean, the Sasquatch may indeed just be a great piece of North American mythology and folklore. I don't personally believe that, but I accept the possibility. Right. So many of these people who call themselves researchers, they're more like religious leaders pushing a faith. They're convinced, and hallelujah, it's their job to convince everyone else, like a rabbi or a priest on a pulpit, and that's just the wrong way to go about it, at least in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I got to say that, in the chat that comes through on this show, and Thom, you and I usually run the chats. You're usually on Facebook. I'm usually running YouTube watching, and the questions are awesome. I learn from everybody in there. And when you seniors in the field get in there and drop little comments in, it's like, okay.
Hey, easy with that term, seniors.
I just turned 60. Next year, I'm turning 59. I'm just counting backwards from now.
Back in the day.
Yeah, well,
remember you guys we used to hit the trees with sticks. Now the kids use a computer to do it.
Hell, I spent for most of my career in this. We didn't even have computers. I wasn't even online until 2004.
Hey, so, and welcome.
Sorry, Steve.
Welcome. Welcome, Farrell. Good to see you. He's from Calgary, Alberta.
Cool. I love Alberta. We spent a lot of years there on the east side of the Rocky Mountains. Yeah. A lot of my first book was about Alberta. No one had ever done a book about Alberta before, and I said, well, they've been seeing it here in Eastern BC. They got to be seeing it here too. My first 24 years was, I didn't move to BC till actually to 2002.
Yep.
Yeah, all that.
Quickwitty made another comment too. He just said that's the difference, Steve. You wouldn't ban me for asking simple questions, and they did. Mm-hmm. And Quickwitty usually asks some of the toughest questions we have out there. Sometimes, like he called onto the carpet. Somebody. Well, where does your expedition money go? How much? And of course we asked that, and I always predicate that to some people that hey, this is a question from the chat. We gotta, we're gonna ask it. Nothing is off bounds unless there is something specific like an NDA or in place that then, we'll work with it.
Well, it's like when we went on expedition or Operation Sea Monkey in 2016. I hated that name. People were all asking Todd, where did that money go? And I said, what do you think it went? It paid for the gas, it paid for the food, and we paid for the boat owner and the captain.
Yeah. Mick made a question.
Port Chatham expedition?
It was called Operation Sea Monkey. It was in the islands between Vancouver Island and the mainland.
Yes, you went a boating with Todd Neese.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Ron Moore had it. Yeah.
Mick said the blog talk days were fun in their own right. I wish Steve could find the episode with Beckford and repost it. That was a funny show. Funny you should say that, Mick, because that's one of the shows that is going to Patreon. Because some of the because I do have a lot of the old shows, and some of the folks remember Dr. Wolfhenner Fahrenbach.
Oh, fair. Yeah.
And he was great. He was a great interviewer, great interview as well.
It's a pity he doesn't seem to be involved anymore. I haven't heard from him in a long time.
No, he retired from it, as did Jimmy Chilcutt.
Yeah, Jimmy was an interesting fellow too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I never, Dr. Leroy Fish passed away before I could ever get him on. He was a wildlife biologist, wasn't he?
Yeah. Brian Sykes passed away recently as well. Yeah. John Bernanego lost him.
Of course, I was going to say.
I
mean, you had a lot of interaction with Dr. John, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you lost your friend, and I know you guys.
I've lost a lot of my friends. Yeah. I mean, they're all gone. Yeah.
I know I had the chance to meet Dr. John back in 2006 on our Monster Quest episode, and he actually looked at my print, and that was kind of the coolest thing. Okay. So we do have a question from Farrell coming up here, and it's like, what's your take on the Calgary sighting that's supposed to take place in Calgary Park area? It's a very interesting video. Kid says that isn't human. It looked big and moved very fast.
I know exactly the one he's talking about. I think they were looking at a moose from the back. It was a moose that got up and walked away. And what struck me most was the attitude of the adult in that situation. I think the adult kind of knew it, because his attitude was, let's get the kids away. There's something unknown here that could be harmful or something like that. It was like, ooh, gee, wow, look, it's Santa Claus. Ooh, that kind of thing. Yeah. I think what it was a moose. Probably a female moose without antlers, and it was sitting there, and it got up and walked away at their approach. That's what I think it was. I've looked at it a dozen times, and that's what I think it was.
And there you go. I haven't seen it, so
it looks bipedal because you're looking at it directly from the back.
We got two other questions. One for me. Was it 2013, Steve, when you flew to Hollywood, California to call Rick Dyer's bluff? Yes, was. And I did. And I met Susie Mateus, who runs the Bigfoot community on Facebook. And what was his name? But we ended up, they ended up picking me up at the airport. We ended up going to a bar, having a couple of cocktails, enjoying our time. And then we had In-N-Out Burger, and I flew home. So I got my In-N-Out Burger fix, and off I went. Here it is. Hang on. No. Where is it? Oh, Timmy Boy. Has Thomas ever phoned Bigfoot?
No, but I think he's phoned me half a dozen times. Or at least people trying to be one.
Funny thing is, in that whole thing, and Ken Collins, he was the organizer of that event, and poor Ken is catching hell for that, folks. He didn't plan it. He didn't know it. It was just as a surprise to him as everybody else. So just please let the pressure off of so we got a bunch of questions coming through. First one is quick witty. Any thoughts on aggressive Sasquatch evidence they found in the Brushy Road Creek area? I don't know if you've heard any of that.
I've heard it said in Texas that they seem to have a more aggressive animal in general, and people are disappearing and stuff like that. But I noticed there don't seem to be much police interest in these cases.
And that's huge, because why wouldn't the police want to be involved?
Yeah. And I think if the Sasquatch was aggressive, or we had some kind of monster out there, we'd know more about them by now.
Yep.
But on the same time, people do disappear in wilderness areas every year, and I think if you ran into a hostile Sasquatch, you would tend to disappear. Yeah.
And from our good friend Tate, who has a great first name, not so great last name, Tate Hieronymus.
Oh, wait a minute, hold it.
No, it's not. Wrong Tate. He says, "What do you guys think of Les Stroud Survivor and Bigfoot series?"
I have no problem with Les Stroud. I think he was taken in by Todd Stanning, though, a bit.
Yep.
Well, not a bit, a lot. Or he was just playing along. He knew Todd Stanning was pulling his leg, and he just played along for the show. I don't know.
But his new series is just him.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen any of those.
No, I don't. I don't have cable TV.
Okay.
I gave it up.
So his new series is just him going out and his cameraman going out, doing all the stuff they need to do to find Bigfoot, and it's very, very critical, skeptical. I felt it was very honest,
Well, good. I'm glad he is, because like I said, I always liked Les Stroud as an outdoor enthusiast and survivalist. I always liked what he did, but when he got involved with Todd Stanning, I said, "Oh, come on, man, you can't be this gullible."
Yeah. And Bob Lemley mentioned it's on YouTube, so you can check it out.
It is? Okay, yeah, I will. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will check it out.
I've watched some. Yep.
Sorry, Steve. He actually reached out to Ray about his story down in South America. So,
cool.
He's way before he was doing the other stuff. So,
Gotcha.
That whole survival thing. So it's the background on that is that's one of my guys he reached out to that had a very encounter.
Yep. And I don't know if you've heard Ray's story, Tom. Ray was an Army Ranger medic, and he was in Central America with a Ranger battalion, not a battalion, but a
special team.
Special team. And they were working against FARC at the time, the insurgent group there. And his platoon, that's the word I was looking for, his platoon had at least a couple of encounters with the Mapinguari, which is the South American, Central American version of Bigfoot. And his story is truly amazing. And he had another follow-up story where he actually got separated from his platoon and was lost for 22 days in the jungles of Central America. So very, very great. It's, if you ever catch it, it's somewhere on. We didn't have, actually, it was on the Blog Talk side, I think. We had him on. We'd love to get Ray back too, by the way, Mike. Just to
I'll grab him.
Yeah, just to do it again on video for the new audience.
You say he was a Ranger?
Yes.
United States Rangers?
United States Ranger, Army Ranger, yep.
And what year was this?
That way had, I think it was 83, 84 that this had happened.
I think it was
Is it generally that only the United States was involved in fighting down in South America?
Well, he was special forces. So,
okay.
So it was, the FARC insurgents were trying to overthrow, what was it, Colombia? Mike?
There's some things we got to keep, but
Gotcha.
he was Ecuador, but Tom, I'll reach out to you offline on the whole.
Yeah.
Right. Roger that. Roger that.
Yeah.
In the Canadian military, I only know of one incident, and it wasn't even, they didn't even use the word. They just said, "We've got an intruder near the perimeter." And of course, they went out to look, and it was described as a freaking bear that walked on 2 feet.
Yeah.
That's basically that all that came out of that. And if there was any follow-up on it, I have no idea.
Well, they were close enough to see the face with the little gooseneck flashlights, the old stacks.
Now, Tom's, I don't know if you're aware of the Rogers Rangers in the Green Mountains of Vermont had something journaled in their exploits. I believe it was in 1759, where they had to repel a group of bears that were throwing rocks at them with a volley of shot.
I've heard the story. Yep. I heard the story.
So
it wasn't us.
No.
We were the enemy then, so it wasn't us.
Have you had a good rock throwing incident?
Have I had a rock throwing incident? Yep. I've exposed a bunch of hoax rock throwing incident, and I've had one possible true one on our own, an area we like to go to, and this is getting to be 10 years now. Guys I was with say something's throwing rocks because they noticed these rocks falling all around us. And this area they had just put a new road through because they were going to be logging it. and we were going up and down this freshly dug Forest Service road because it was all dirt, and it was a great place to look for tracks. So we're going up and down it, and while we stopped on one of our breaks, all of a sudden a bunch of rocks came flying, and I still wonder to this day where they came from, because we never saw anything. And the only other human around was the guy at the gate at the beginning of the road who was supposed to keep people like us from going in there because they're afraid of people messing around with the equipment. But we got there when he was away or something. He didn't see us go in. So we asked him, we always wondered, well, was this guy throwing rocks and stuff like that? We asked him, it was impossible because he would have had to been the greatest pitcher in history to throw the rocks down to the point of the road where we were. So it wasn't something was throwing rocks or someone that we didn't see.
Todd, Thom, I don't know if you can read the screen.
More likely, except I think his aim would have probably been a little better.
What the screen said was Todd standing. It was Todd standing there, right?
But one of the biggest, there was a guy here who was, what, got about my wife, smoke detector.
The smoke detector. Anyway, gotta go. My wife, the smoke detector is.
And well, I didn't set up a Krakatoa here, did I? But one of the, we had a guy here who was trying to make rounds in the Bigfoot field named Randy Brisson in Golden Ears Park, who did a lot of hiking in that area, and he claimed the sighting, and there was one possible footprint incident he was involved with that I think could be possibly authentic because he's not the one that found him. He was led to him by somebody else. But we caught him red-handed throwing rocks. We were down there. A bunch of people in the BFRO came up. He was getting that much attention at the time. And we were doing a sort of a kilometer hike. What? You better get your wife an air fryer.
That's my audience.
What was I talking about? Oh, yeah.
Randy Brisson.
Yeah. And I noticed right away, and David Hill, I said, stay back a bit, and for God's sakes, don't let this guy get in behind the group. Because all the time, every time it happened, it always happened to be when he was off to the side or he was not in view. And rocks was a very generous term. It was more like big pebbles. And he did the same mistake so many people who hoax these things make. He couldn't stop himself. He had to get that last one in, and he happened to throw it behind his back when I was looking right at him. And he winged it off a tree, which I don't think he meant to hit. And so that was that, you know. And it was hooking. The biggest problem with rock throwing is it's one of the easiest things to fake, you know. But what that day when we were in that expedition in the Norris Creek region, where somebody or something unknown or somebody unknown was throwing rocks in our generation, and they were pretty healthy size ones, judging by the way we heard them coming down through the trees, like.
Yep.
I have no idea, but we didn't see anything, and we looked. You know, we tried. And at one point they were coming down one side of the road, and then they were coming down the other side of the road, and then they went back to the first side of the road. But we saw nothing cross the road. And none of my guys who were with me was doing this. They drew my attention to it. And we're all looking at each other the whole time when we heard the damn thing. So, yeah, so somebody or something was throwing rocks. And that's probably the only time I was involved in the rock throwing that incident that I cannot explain away. But I can't say a Sasquatch did it because we didn't see anything.
Timmy Boy is back, by the way. He forgot about his Bluetooth headphones. Well, we're glad to have you back, Timmy. And by the way, over on Facebook, since you're on YouTube, Bob Lemley sent you a message, said, better get your wife an air fryer. So, so we got a few more questions popping up. But before we get into that, I have a question of my own. Is what do you think of Matilda?
Who's Matilda?
That is the Bigfoot Adrian Erickson.
Oh, God. Oh, you mean Kentucky?
Was that Kentucky?
Was it Kentucky? You mean?
I don't know. I always thought Randy Brisson was the one who came up with Matilda.
Matilda. Yeah, I remember Matilda. Yeah, he was involved in the Erickson project. Yeah. It's a guy wearing a Chewbacca suit.
Yeah, exactly.
No. I remember Erickson, he was up here, and he said 2011 is the year of the Sasquatch.
I'm pretty sure that was a Randy Brisson product.
Randy Brisson was involved with him. Randy Brisson was showing him around. I tried to warn him about Randy Brisson, but he didn't listen to me.
He didn't warn you about Janice either, did he? Because there was a
he bought the property.
I know. Well, no, he didn't. He bought the Kentucky property, but he was paying Janice a stipend.
I did not know. I heard he bought the property.
No, he didn't buy.
And later on, she tried to say they followed us to the new property. You want to buy that too?
No, that was the Kentucky property.
Yeah, okay.
It was the Johnsons that said that the Bigfoot followed them to the new property, and they tried to get somebody else. That another question is they tried to get Biscardi to buy it. Yeah, it was the same folks that had the Kentucky property, so the Bigfoot followed them. But that being said, somebody asked in there, have you ever crossed paths with Mr. Snapple himself, Mr. Biscardi?
No, he's another guy I tend to avoid. And usually when I hear about something going on and I hear he's involved, I got red flags right off the bat. Yeah. He was involved with the Georgia boys and their body in the fridge.
Oh, absolutely.
Stuff. And I just, as soon as I heard he was involved, I thought, okay, this is horse shit.
Yep.
And I looked at the mask in the fridge, and I said, I recognize this. This is a Halloween costume from that company in California. They do these high-grade Halloween costumes. They simply bought one of these costumes and stuffed it with guts of some kind.
And then that night, the owner of the company was on Coast to Coast with Warren Coleman, and
they did have him on Coast to Coast, huh? Okay.
I
missed that one. Yeah.
Now we're getting another tough question from Quick Witty. Wasn't David Paulides part of the Erickson project? No, he was part of the Ketchum study.
Yeah, the Ketchum study. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think about Mr. Paulides?
Well, David Paulides was a key pusher of the MK massacre of Bluff Creek theory. That's how we first started. That's how we first started getting known. Paulides was sending emails to John Green saying, "You got to come clean," and stuff like that. And Green was taken aback by all that. I was a bit of a fan of Mr. Paulides at first because his first book came out called Tribal Bigfoot. I thought, I'm impressed. It took me 15 years to get this much eyewitness testimony to write a book, and he did it in 3 weeks. Then I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that everyone that was in that book got paid $80 for their story or something like that. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I heard. I said, well, geez, there's a woman in Chapman at the Sasquatch Inn will tell you stories all night long if you just keep buying the beer. But he was involved in the original when the massacre, and I and John and Bill Miller got together and we wrote that article debunking that whole thing. And we caught Paulides saying, "Oh, I never said accused you of anything." John said, "Well, what about this email you sent to Al Hodgson saying,
oh yeah,
you're harboring a deep dark secret." He didn't know that we were friends with Al Hodgson, so anything he said to him, we heard about it. So the only good thing is, instead of admitting he was wrong, Paulides went dead quiet on the whole thing. He never mentioned it again. And I still to this day have never heard him himself bring up the massacre of Bluff Creek again.
Yeah. It's kind of a bad topic to get onto if you're pro massacre. Of course, the other guy, the How to Hunt guy, actually alluded that Bobby Short was murdered.
Yeah,
and that was a total travesty too. So
I think Paulides was How to Hunt guy's law enforcement friend.
It was, because they had like a couple of weeks before he made that reference. They apparently were together at some bar somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's probably maybe Paulides that got How to Hunt to bring up that whole massacre crap again. Yeah.
Ken Collins said that he knows Dennis Foll, and Dennis Foll hated the Erickson project. I don't know how true. I don't know if you know Dennis or.
Well, the Erickson project was a complete and utter thing that got blown way out of proportion. And I said at the time, I don't know if you remember hearing me say that, I said at the time, the only thing that's going to come out of this, and I said the same thing about the Ketchum study, is they're going to be guests on Coast to Coast Radio once or twice a year with George Norrie, and that's about it.
Yep.
You know, and I was right both times. You know, I knew it. And when everyone says, oh, we got this great footage, but they won't show it to you, or it's a big secret or something like that, you know, when you eventually do see it, it's not going to turn out what they claim. And it didn't. And why they couldn't recognize the Chewbacca mask messed up a little bit when they saw one, I'll never understand. But
confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Confirmation.
Yeah.
Well, the whole Ketchum study was nothing but confirmation bias. They fit that DNA to fit their prescribed.
Yeah. Yeah, and buying your own magazine, publishing your own stuff doesn't qualify as confirmation. and
failing to mention it.
Yeah,
that you bought the publication until the press says, "Hey, wait a minute." Lockbeard says, "I think Peter Kane's account of being sexually abused by a she Sasquatch is more believable than a Sasquatch phone call." So there is another question, Thomas. How did they come up with that massacre BS? Do you know exactly? I mean,
I know exactly what happened, and I kind of blame myself a little bit for this because I'm partially at fault. MK before the massacre stuff was in rather high regard with us all because of the stabilization work he had done on the PG film in general, right? Now, what happened was we sent him, and I think it was Chris Murphy through Rick Knoll. We sent him a copy of a lecture film that John Green had put together in the early 1970s. It's a film that John Green had made for public speaking purposes because this is before computers and nowadays we can just hook up the laptop and we can put anything we want on the screen. Back before those times, you showed movies, you showed slides, or those old floppies that they used to put in the machine there. That's what you did. And he had this made for lecture purposes. And on this lecture film, you had the Patterson Gimlin footage, a bad copy of it. Yeah, and you had other films spliced in because he's talking about different aspects of the mystery. And you had a beautiful picture of the mountainside with this old couple in Vancouver Island somewhere. You had the lady at the museum showing the book wash mask in front of it, and it would talk about that. You had little bits of the second roll of film that Patterson shot that day of him holding the cast up. You got the Patterson footage, and you got it stopped. And none of this had ever been seen by the public before. And, of course, you had a lot of the Blue Creek Mountain footage during the Blue Creek Mountain investigations of August, September of 67 too, which was mostly DeHinden's film. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of shots of the pilot, T. Kazara, in that footage, walking around with the shotguns looking at the tracks. Well, MK, this is what I think happened. MK got a look at that, and since he'd never seen any of that before, he thought he was looking at never before seeing parts of the Patterson Gimlin film, not knowing that they were different films spliced onto this public speaking film that had the Patterson footage on it as well, right? And he thought the Blue Creek Mountain footage and stuff like that was never before seen and parts that were being kept secret from the Patterson Gimlin film itself. And he started seeing all this stuff in there, the body parts and stuff. And then he came out with this massacre because and I don't like calling people a hoaxer, but when you alter images, and he did, stills from the Blue Creek Mountain footage, to make the hands of the pilot look red, to make the water in the creek look red, and saying it's blood. When you alter images to give a false impression of what people are looking at, that's hoaxing by any definition I know. Okay? And that's what he did. And we called him on it. And at the time they were even saying that the pilot, a man named Keith Kazara, was Bob Titmus, and Bob Titmus was involved. And of course, Bob Titmus was a taxidermist, and they said he was skinning them there after they shot them all and stuff like that. So the basic premise was they all went down there. John Green, DeHinden, and Moffat, and all of them were all professional Canadian killers who were down there to wipe out this family of Sasquatch and cover the whole things up for the American government for some reason. And Pilates fell for this. Bobby Short fell for this. Bobby was telling us, my unnamed experts say that's Bob Titmus in that footage. And I said, well, who are your unnamed experts? Pilates and MK? You know, it's not.
Yeah.
It's Keith Kazera. He's still alive. He lives, or at least he was then, back in 2010. He lives in Lethbridge, Alberta. We published all that. We published his flight log. We did everything to prove that it wasn't even Timmins they were looking at. They just didn't want to hear it because it went against the narrative. And that's how it all came about. It's partially our fault because we wanted to get MK's opinion on certain aspects of the Blue Creek Mountain and the Patterson Gimlin film because we were working on the book Meet the Sasquatch at the time. Yeah.
So we got a bunch of questions in the chat. So I got to scroll up a little bit. First, there was a question: does anybody know what happened to DDoS's channel? Heard nothing about him, but the whole channel has gone. Well, DDoS currently is incarcerated in a Texas prison for domestic violence charges, and he will not be eligible for parole towards the end of this year, I believe. So that's what happened to him.
He was also involved in that guy's show from Florida. His name's got on my head. I was a guest a couple of times. Audio only. It's gone on my head. Yeah, but DDoS was usually on there quite a bit.
Yep. Yeah, he's not going to get out till sometime close to 2022, and that's if only if he gets paroled by then. He may. His sentence ends, I think, the end of 2022. If I'm not correct, I can't pull it. Well, actually, I don't have the share screen up, so I can pull it up and tell you the exact. He's. I'm sorry. He's the parole eligibility is expected in October of 2021, but he had gotten sentenced to. It doesn't really say. So he could stay in there as long as November of 2022, but at least on parole through then. So once he gets out. So that's unfortunate, but sometimes you reap what you sow, unfortunately. And it wasn't his first run in either. So, and I like D. I did. Unfortunately, people have demons. So, okay. So let's get back on the topic of the Bigfoot. Hello to Bob Hip, my good friend Bob Hip, a longtime friend, popped in, said hello. So we have 8 minutes left to show. So we're going to go through some of these questions as quick as possible. People asked where Bobby came into play. Well, Bobby was basically, let me answer that one real quick. Bobby was basically starting to believe the story because, David Pilates was leaning on her. MK was leaning on her. And, she was up there in years. People think she was a young woman. She wasn't. She was well into her 70s. And then she passed away. And now Steve Isdall claims that there's a murder conspiracy on that. So there was something saying okay, 2 more questions we got. So first thing is also Eric Waltman says hello.
Hello.
He says
hello.
Haven't heard from you in a bit. But let's see. First, the first question was, can you tell us something about Bill Miller?
Bill Miller was an American from Illinois. He used to come up here all the time to do research. He was a good friend and a colleague, and he passed away October 1st. When he wasn't involved in the Sasquatch field, he was well known in the Kennedy assassination crowd because, man, that man could tell you everybody that was in that Zapruder film, what he was doing, what it was, and what happened to them later on in life. I mean, he knew everything about it. Yeah. I mean, he was an absolute giant. When as a younger man, he was an absolute friend, absolute fan of President Kennedy. He thought he was the greatest thing sliced bread. And when Kennedy was assassinated, I think it really, really hurt him. And like it hurt so many others. And he wanted to get the bomb because he never, ever bought the official explanation for the Kennedy assassination. And Bill's greatest contribution to the Bigfoot field, in my opinion, was when we worked together to put together that article, blowing that massacre theory out of the water. And he actually visited the Ford Motion Picture Lab in Seattle because he was doing something for the Kennedy assassination thing. He wanted to buy some old Kodak 8mm, and he just happened to talk to somebody, and somehow the subject of Bigfoot came up and said, "Oh yeah, we developed that here. We showed it right on that wall right over there." Oh well, great. Who was that? What was a businessman the first year, Al Diatley. He put it, and then about 6 or 7 months later, a little cowboy showed up to have copies made. Roger Patterson. So I can tell you right now, all those questions of where was the film developed? It was developed in the Ford Motion Picture Lab at 306 Fairview Avenue, North Seattle, Washington. And I'll give you the phone number too.
There you go.
So Bill was great, and he was strictly zoological, common sense, and I miss him a lot.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that's not really.
Yeah, well, I miss John Green a lot. I miss Rennie a lot. I miss Robert a lot. I miss Grover a lot. I miss John Bennett a lot. But we all get old, and it comes to an end. Yeah.
Yeah. Last question we're gonna hit. And if we have time, we'll get to Ken's question. What do you think of Justin Smeja's story?
The guy who claims to have shot one. I think it has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was if there was anything shot, it was a bear. Yeah, and I go along with what the follow-up investigation came. Yeah.
Okay, Ken Collins' question. What do you think of Daniel Perez's breakdown on Patty?
I think Daniel Perez has done a lot of work down there. I was down there with him myself in 2003. His breakdown, has he come to a different conclusion than his original one?
No, I don't think so. I think
I think he's probably pretty well bang on the money. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he was wrong where the film location was for a while. Yeah. I always knew where exactly it was. It was still there, but I think he was a little off, and I told him that. Matter of fact, in 2003, Daniel and I, there was a group going down there looking at the film set, and they were going the wrong way down the creek. Said, "No, follow us." And we did. Yeah. No. Daniel's conclusions of Patty, I think, is pretty bang on. Unless he's changed it. I know he's coming up with another publication soon on the whole subject. I don't know if he's changed it.
I don't think so. Because I know he recently gave a lecture in Ohio.
I didn't see it, so yeah.
And nobody was saying anything negative about it. And if he had come out with a different result, people would have been saying, "Oh, I think
I think he believes that it was an actual creature that day. Yeah. And I think he's bang on about the height estimates and stuff like that. He's probably right. But still, the biggest question is, what the hell lens did he have on that damn camera? Yeah.
So we are at the end of the show, just about. Thom, you have any final words for anybody? Anything you want to throw out there? Any projects you're doing?
Well, the biggest project right now, I'm looking at COVID's restricted my travel. I can't go in the United States, and now they're using COVID as an excuse to turn us into a show us your papers society. We're not really allowed to travel outside our medical zone. And there's been tracks found recently not too far away that's I think is outside my medical zone. So I got a colleague looking into it for me. I won't say anything about it till I know more about it, but it just happened May 4th. And to people who want to get involved in this, go for it. But for God's sakes, 98% of what you see on YouTube and the internet is, well, it's a soapbox for every snake oil salesman out there. 90% of it's absolute garbage. Stick to the facts. Never deviate from the facts. Have a healthy dose of common sense.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mike, anything final you want to ask Thom before we go tonight?
Is anybody taking one of those cameras to Lake Kodak to see what they might think it is? I mean, I'm in Rochester, which is the home of Kodak, and we have the George Eastman House, which it has a lot of those old cameras and video equipment. So Just wonder if anybody had reached out to them for that equipment or that analysis.
Well, again, it was in general because no one ever took down the serial number of the actual camera that Roger rented that day. It's even a long shot mathematical possibility that this might be it, because a buddy of mine picked this up for me in Washington State. But whatever happened to the exact camera, nobody knows. Even Shepherd's Camera Shop has no idea what eventually happened to it, whether it got thrown out or whatever. But no one ever took. And they did no record of what lens they had on the damn thing.
Oh.
So that's all they can tell you about it.
So here's a little bit of insight I may have.
But one thing though, it's like I told you earlier. They're the ones that told me that this type of camera was actually, they stopped producing it in 1964. So but there were still a lot of them around in 67, yeah.
Thomas, I'm wondering if that complaint paperwork, because usually that paperwork floats around forever.
You'd think. If
that complaint paperwork actually has the camera serial number on it.
I don't know. No one's ever checked on that.
There we go.
There's a lead for I went down there and I asked for paperwork. They said, "Oh God." I mean, most of the old camera stuff is went with the old cameras.
No, I'm talking about the police agency, the police paperwork.
Oh, could be. I don't know.
I wonder
which police force was it? Was it the Yakima Sheriff Department? Was it the state troopers? Who arrested Roger Patterson?
It would be in the court paperwork where he actually had the charge.
I wonder.
Because they would have had the cost of the camera to put the charge in there.
Right.
So they would have the actual camera lens and the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there's any additional equipment.
Or any additional equipment. Yeah. They still don't know if Bob doesn't think so, but some people saying there used to be a holding handle for the bottom of these things. So you can see the hole for it right there. But according to Bob, Roger never had a handle on the camera. He was holding it like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you ever look through the lens of this thing, it's terrible. It's like looking through a pair of binoculars backwards. It's awful. It was Bob Gibbon that had a good look at the damn thing that day, not Roger. Yeah.
Well, again, Thomas, I'm so glad you came on. It's always a treat to have you on.
Well, at least you don't have to hold a phone over though.
I don't have to hold the phone. I'm not doing this tonight. What do you think, Tom? So that's awesome. Thank you, Mike, for sitting in for Chris.
Thank you both for letting me be out here, and make sure you guys hit that like and share button. I'll do that for Chris tonight.
And great job, Mike. Keep searching, man. I'm glad you took a little time up for the show tonight, but appreciate you out there in the snow trying to find the evidence, man. That's what we
be safe,
do,
brother.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
And we'll see you next week or this upcoming weekend at the Sasquatch Triangle Bigfoot Conference in Ohio, Coshocton, Ohio. So who knows? We may get to tootle around in Salt Fork State Park for a little bit.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So, folks, on behalf of everybody here, I just want to let everybody know in 2 weeks, we will be returning with Leon from Bigfoot Okanagan and Steve Anderson from Curious Cryptid, who is actually in chat tonight. So there he is. And these guys are brains, and Tom, you know both of them as well. And boy, you guys are going to be in for a mind trip. But it's going to be a great show. We'll be returning here in 2 weeks, which that means that should be 23rd, I believe. That would be May 23rd, 2021 for episode 65. Again, we're going to have Steve, the Curious Cryptid, and Leon, Bigfoot Okanagan, and we'll have those guys on, of course, 9 p.m. Eastern here on youtube.com/Steve Kulls. So on behalf of everybody here, we want to wish everybody a happy, safe, and healthy week. We are almost out of this COVID stuff, so let's keep our prayers that it's going to pass quickly. And we'll catch you, of course. God bless, and of course, keep on squatching. Catch you all here in a couple of weeks.
folks. You've been watching Squatch-D TV. Join us each week, Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, for the latest on the Bigfoot mystery. As always, we thank you for being our loyal viewers and encourage all to subscribe to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Steve Kulls. As always, have a great week. Stay safe. God bless. And keep on squatching.